right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our first speaker series of 2022. I can't believe it. Like, it seems like it's been a while, and I'm very excited to have some special guests here. We have Mr. Ashford Hughes. He is the MNPS Executive Officer of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And then we have Ms. Tim Chow, who is the transfer specialist. And we're going to be talking about open enrollment, y'all. So last week, you guys know we celebrated School Choice Week. And so this is basically a continuation of that celebration for parents to be able to kind of have a choice and send their children to schools that they desire. So we're gonna talk about that tonight, and I'm excited. So welcome, Ashford. Welcome, Tim. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Hey, thank y'all for having us. Looking forward to being here with you all to share some information, but importantly to hear from you and answer your questions. So thank you.
All right, and Tim, you want to say hello?
I do. Thank you so much for having me. It's my first time. I'm excited.
We are glad to have you. But you know what? I'm gonna break the ice a little bit. Just break it a little bit. Ashford, like tell us like a little bit about what you do at MNPS. And you know what? I also want you to say Black History Month is coming up tomorrow. Like what is it that you're most excited about Black History Month?
I'm gonna start on the first end. So, my role, I do a little bit of everything. I would think, my title is Executive Officer for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And within that role, I try to work with our principals, our teachers, our families, and our students to map out ways in which that our students have what they have and get what they get to make certain that they can reach whatever they feel their academic and social potential is. So that's making certain that our schools are culturally competent, making sure that our schools understand and value the cultural wealth within our communities so they can connect and relate, and then to help our kids see themselves in the education that they're receiving. But then I also have an opportunity to supervise this great school choice team, which makes certain that families are aware of all the school opportunities that they have to send their kids to, make certain that they have all the information and the documentation to understand what choice is, what schools have to offer their families. And one of the things that I really pride myself on is being in the schools. There are two particular schools that I spend most of my time when I do support and volunteer, Maplewood and Jerry Baxter, really looking at mentorship programs for young men. And really hoping to spawn that out within the district for not just young Black and brown boys, but for young Black and brown girls as well. We know that mentorship in our community is vital. For the last 2 years, I have normally woken up in the morning on Blacks in History Month and provided some information for all 28 days about a different book, a different person to learn from. And the reason I call it Blacks in History Month, because when we look at the true history of Blacks in History Month by Carter G. Woodson, it didn't start out as a month. It started out as a Blacks in History, because Black history is American history. There is no America without the history of Blacks in this country, some that came here enslaved. So my quest for tomorrow is to really let people understand the importance of Carter G. Woodson and the story of how it went from a recognition to report back. We know that the history of Blacks in America is 365 days of the year. This week, which is now a month, was supposed to be for everybody to gather knowledge and report back what they had learned over the year. So I want to bring that back to MNPS. So I'm excited to work with our schools and our young people to make certain we understand the history of it, particularly with a lot of things that's going on around in our country and our state, socially, around book banning and all of that stuff. So we got to keep educating our folks and keep it moving.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And speaking of mentorship, I want to shout out Persistent Mentor. I signed up to be a mentor, and this week I have the pleasure and the honor of joining that mentoring program. It's 40 students and 37 professionals who are registered to sign up for that. So I'm excited about that. But Tim, you have the opportunity to work with parents. Sounds like on a daily basis. So introduce yourself. Let us know what you do, and then just tell us, like, what do you enjoy most about working with parents? Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute.
Sorry. I've been with Metro Schools for over 13 years. Started with Metro School when my daughter had turned kindergarten age, as a matter of fact. So I was really excited to be able to not be a parent, but also be part of the district and grow that way together. I've been in the Office of School Options for, I want to say, 10 years now. And my daily routine consists of navigating parents through, choices, optional schools application, emergency hardship, just navigating through the school district as far as like how to attend a different school that's not their zone school. I proud myself to say that I work in a district that has choices. Um, I believe all of our schools are the same. They're great schools, but one may be a better fit for a child. But again, I pride myself to be in a district that has choices.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And you know what? Let's go ahead and kick this thing off. And Ashford, I'm going to let you take the driver's seat, and so that
Awesome.
you guys can get started on the presentation.
Awesome. I appreciate you. I want to thank you, Sonia. Thank your team. Thank Propel for allowing us to be here tonight. And thank you for the work that you are doing to support families. I've watched Propel. I watched the partner organization in Memphis, and then I see some of the tentacles you have with other parent organizations across the country. And that was a pivotal time. So I want to make certain that parents, we're going to go through this slide deck, but important to myself and Tim, we want to be able to take time and answer questions while you have us here, and know that we're always available to answer questions at any point in time. And whether it's through Ms. Thomas, whether it's through Mr. Little or anybody else on the team, Ms. Hawkins, we're available to be connected with and to be able to walk families through whatever they need. So I'm going to go through this slide and try to be as thorough and as quick as possible so we can hear from you directly what you want to have asked us. So we know that we all understand a strong public education. And as I was just saying about Carter G. Woodson and about education for our youth, we do have a school district that has pre-K, elementary, middle school, and high school that has a variety of options, hoping to fit and fill the need of what your student has. We have traditional MNPS schools, and we also have now public charter schools that have been ingrained in our institution, in our organization for going on 20 years now. So we pride ourselves on letting everybody know there is a place to grow and to learn here within Metro Nashville Public Schools in our public education space. What we want to kind of walk through today is the difference between zone schools, optional schools, and those charter schools. Right now, we have around 159 schools in general. About 139 of those schools are traditional MNPS schools. Many of our schools are zone schools. All of our schools, I should say, are zone schools. Every school within our district has a particular zone, meaning if you live within a certain school zone, then your child has direct access to that school at any point in time. They are guaranteed a seat to that zone school. But we also have optional schools because we know, and it was brought on years ago, that our families wanted to be able to have choices and where to send their schools. Now, of our 39 traditional MNPS schools, not all of our schools are optional schools. Some of our schools remain zone schools only because the population around that zone school is so big that they fill up those school seats before anybody else would have access to them. But our optional schools provide an opportunity to make certain that parents can look elsewhere to see what other choices, what other schools are there available if their zone school does not fit the need that they see fit for their students. So you can also find many of what our optional schools are when you go to mnps.org and type in school choice. It will take you directly to our website and our link to be able to look up those optional schools. Many of your families should have received a 3 or 4 page packet last Monday with your student on the way home that has the outline of those schools as well as a paper application for choice options. And then we also have charter schools. We have a lot of great charter schools all over the county. We have some that will be coming online starting next fall as well, as they increase and grow in numbers as well. And those schools provide a different type of education. All the same, everybody's seeking to make certain that students have what they need to be successful. But these schools are growing in the Southeast, in North Nashville, and all around. So these are the options that you can go on our website and find out to figure out what school works best for your child and your family. These are ways that we feel. Another option that you can learn about our schools. Again, schools.mnps.org. You can go to each of our schools, has a platform like you see right here, where you can hear from the principal. You can look at what type of courses the school has. You can find out about the school. You can get the directory of the principal, the teachers in there, the counselors, so you know who to contact to be able to find out what's going on at a particular school you're interested in. You can also type in your address in Zone Finder to be able to find and secure, where is my zone school? Where is my zoned option school? Not every school, not every zone has a zoned option school. Many schools are a zoned option for certain families based on that zoning area and the demographics, the poverty index, and the economics of the community. And we want to make certain that those families, our families, have more options to make certain they really get what they want. And that's the essence of equity, providing families what they need and the choices they desire to get the most for their children. So we again ask you to look at the school web pages. Many of our schools have social media. Many of our schools are on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and other platforms. And we ask you to really dig in and call and find out more about the schools before you make a choice. We also have a department, the Family Information Center. They are very helpful to call and contact if you cannot find what you're looking for on the web, but want some information on schools or where to look for more information, or if you cannot find and the school has not been getting directly back in contact with you, they can help alleviate those issues for you to make certain that you get what you need to find out more about the schools. And we also ask, if you're thinking about a school that isn't your zone school, go and find out about the community. Ask your friends or family or people in the neighborhood of the school about the community, about the school, so you know exactly where you're sending your child. Vitally important. School tours. Now, traditionally, before we all came into this COVID space, many of our schools would have school tours during the day. And that was a time where families and parents can see in the process of school what the curriculums were being taught, what was taking place in the school, and meet and visit other teachers. Well, since we have been in the COVID space, we kind of ended the tours last year. But our tours have been started back up again with our schools. They are just taking place after school hours, so as not to create any type of misunderstanding and COVID and all of those things. And it's a health and security protocol. But those school tours, every school should be utilizing the opportunities for families to come and tour outside of those school hours. All you have to do is call that school, call that principal, call that assistant principal, and schedule a tour to come in and get them to work with you. Last year, many of our schools got creative and did digital tours for families. So make certain if there's a school that you want to look at, to contact the school and they can set you up on a tour soon. Some of the things that we want to talk about coming up now: key deadlines, what you need to apply, and then applying online. Many of you, again, received information from your students, but the optional application for our lottery went live last Monday, January the 24th. That process will continue to be live until February the 11th. So you have until February the 11th to turn in your optional school application. Now, important, if you want to submit your school choice online, those must be submitted by 11:59 p.m. on Friday, February the 11th. Please make sure that you get those in on time. You can either do this application online, or you can actually mail back in a paper application, or you can come into our Family Information Center located at 2601 Bransford Avenue if you want some more personalized help filling out the form. but online applications must be submitted by February the 11th at 11:59 p.m. Paper applications must be in by February the 11th at 4:30 p.m. So if you have paper, you have to get it in that Friday at 4:30 p.m. But if you're filling out online, you have until 11:59 on February the 11th. Please make certain to get those dates. Important to note as well, you have more than one option to choose from. You have up to 7 different options to choose from within your choice application process. So this is our optional schools application process. First and foremost, this process is totally computer randomized. We have a vendor called Smart Choice, and they utilize a methodology within their computer system that we are not a part of. It is almost like you put in a lottery and you spin the ball around, but it is via computer. So school options, any of the MNPS departments do not have a say in what that process is. This is specifically from our vendor that does this randomized computer process. It is important, again, that we meet those deadlines. If you do not meet that deadline and you unfortunately turn your paperwork in after February the 11th, your paperwork will essentially go to the back of the wait list, and you will be starting really at a deficit. So we ask that you get those paperwork in well before February the 11th if you can, just to be on the safe side. But again, randomized computer process, all the applications that will be going in our process have to be in by February the 11th, or you will be at the back of the line on a wait list. Optional schools, the acceptance. Results will be published on Monday, March the 7th. Every year, that Monday, we announce where, and you will receive an email also about where your student will be or has been selected to attend. But you also have a deadline to accept the seat. Again, March 7th is when you know what school your student has been selected to attend. March the 25th is the deadline for you to accept your seat. If you do not accept your seat by March the 25th, you will essentially be forfeiting that seat. Once that seat is forfeited, you will again be placed at the back on the period of a wait list in order to kind of start the process over to see where you may be able to get. And that is not in the place you want to be. So again, March the 7th is when you know where the results will be. March the 25th is when you have the deadline to accept your seat. So please make sure your families are talking about this as soon as March the 7th comes, and decide well before March the 25th to accept your seat so you do not forfeit it. For a small segment of schools, we want to talk about pathways. Many of our schools have a designated pathway to the next tier. And as you'll see on the next slide, in some cases, there are eligibility requirements for those pathways. But we also are important in MNPS. We know that continuity for families is important. If you start in one cluster, you want to continue down that path because you get familiar with the transportation, with the teachers, with the community in that cluster. And we want to make sure that that follows through. This next slide and all of this will be on our webpage as well that we can share. And we can share with Ms. Thomas and Mr. Little to share with families as well, so you can read through this again if you don't have access to going online to our portal. These are examples of elementary to middle school pathways and middle to high school pathways. So for instance, Carter Lawrence Elementary students who want to go to Rose Park have a direct pathway. IT Crestwell Middle School students who want to go to the Nashville School of the Arts have a direct pathway. These are examples of what that pathway looks like for several of our elementary to middle schools and our middle to high school. Now, a caveat to this is to understand, if you are attending any of these schools and you are not in a zone school, so if you're attending Carter Lawrence, but that is not your zone school, you do not have an automatic pathway to Rose Park. You will need to apply. If you are zoned to Carter Lawrence, then you do have a direct pathway to Rose Park. If you are not zoned to Carter Lawrence, you do not have a direct pathway to Rose Park. You must apply. So pathways really are geared toward those students that have a zoned option and they're trying to continue on to that next school. And these are, again, on our website, but we'll also make certain to share this so you can see what these pathways look like as well. This is what our second tiered pathways look like. And again, that brief definition that I gave, the pathways continued, you can see here about the level of the zones having that direct pathway. We often get this all the time. JT Moore does, for zone students, have a direct pathway to Hillsborough. But if you are not a zone family for JT Moore, you do not have a pathway to Hillsborough. You must apply to get into Hillsborough. Vitally important that we understand zone students do have those options for direct pathways. These are some of the preferences that we have within our optional school process. We often, again, want to make certain that families have continuity. So like myself, my son attends Stanford Montessori School. My youngest son will have a sibling preference when my oldest moves up to attend that same school. If you have a student that is attending Waverly Belmont or Robert Churchwell, and you have a younger son or daughter that is on the way to school as well, they will have a sibling preference to be able to get into the same school as your older child is. Vitally important to keep that continuity. If you are an employee of MNPS, we also provide an employee preference. So if you work in that JT Moore cluster or you work in the Churchwell cluster, you have an opportunity to send your son or daughter to any school within that cluster and apply a preference so that you will have your student in that school before some of the other students are able to get in as well. So we want to make certain that we're working with our families, particularly our teachers at this time during COVID. Now, we also have another cluster preference, which isn't always used, but it refers to those students that are seeking a pathway but are not zone students. So often when we do use this, a family will apply for cluster preference if they are a non-zone JT Moore student getting into a Hillsborough. And I'm just using that example is because that comes up to our office rather often. These are some of our schools that have particular requirements. And these are some of our magnets that have academic requirements. Some of our academic magnets do have both a GPA and a MAP testing requirement to be able to get in. Meigs Middle School, MLK Magnet, Hume Fogg High School, and Early College. Meigs, MLK, and Hume, you have to have a cumulative 85 GPA and have a cumulative on the math and reading, a 14 stay 9 on the MAP testing scores. Important, those are academic magnets. You must meet the academic qualifiers to be able to get into those schools, Early College as well. Now we have 3 other schools that also have requirements to get in, not necessarily academic, but other requirements. Nashville School of the Arts has an interview process. Plus, they also have an audition process for you to get in. So oftentimes the optional schools, we do not handle their applications because we're not privy to the interview process or the audition process as well. Crestwell Middle, I believe we're going to be changing it. I believe they want to take away their interview process, so we may be updating that to allow for more students to have access to that great school. And Big Picture has an interview process as well. So these are the schools that have certain criteria before you allow the choice of the option to attend them. Often those final 3, we rarely really work with them. IT Crestwell more so than NSA or Big Picture, but they all have specific requirements before we can allow families to get in. And here it is, some of the interest requirements for those schools that I talked about. GPA of at least 85 or higher, no failing grades, national stay 9 of a 14. Now, I'm still figuring out all the ins and outs of the national state line of 14, we serve as a clearinghouse for our data assessment and research team. That department is the one that has the analysis of the 14 and what it means on the map and the 10 ready scores and how all that is handled. We serve as a clearinghouse to make certain that families know what is needed, how they can test privately, how they may be accepted with another test moving forward, so they know their options if they want to choose their student to get into one of our academic magnet schools. So again, some of our key points for applying: you must be a Davidson County resident. Your student must have a student ID number. If you don't have a student ID number, you can register a number at this site right here. I also wanted to back up and give you a date. Pre-K registration kicks off March the 1st through March 31st. We will be sending out information as that time comes up, but that pre-K registration will be from March 1st through March 31st. You all have heard about this. I know I've seen many of you at the board meeting before, MNPS Reimagine, where we are slowly making certain that all of our schools transition from K4 to K5. Last school year, we transitioned first through K5, the cluster that was Pearl, Maplewood, and Whites Creek. This year, we are starting the process of going that K5 with McGavick, Overton, Stratford, and Hunters Lane. Those are the 4 clusters where the elementary schools will now go through K5 and the middle schools will be 6-8. For all of that information on there, you can again go to that website, mnps.org/school options, and type in reimagined, and you will get all the information ins and out about what that looks like, which schools are going K5 in your cluster, if you're thinking about choosing one of those schools, elementary or middle school, to help you make those decisions moving forward. But that is a plethora of information, and we have been working with our school community to make certain everybody was aware and what that means for our schools. Again, as I close out, I just wanted to update some particular dates to be aware of. Applications will be available online January 20. Well, they have been online since last Monday, January 24th. Applications are due Friday, February the 11th. If you're turning in paper on February the 11th, they must be in by 4:30 p.m. If you are filling out an application online, they must be turned in by 11:59 p.m. on February the 11th. The results will be announced and provided to families on March the 7th. You have the deadline of Friday, March the 25th to accept the seat. I can't say that enough. Accept the seat, please, by Friday, March the 25th. We'll be sharing information out between now and then to make sure that you continuously have these days written down. We'll be sharing them out on all of our social media. We can definitely make a strong push and provide, again, this information to Ms. Thomas, to Mr. Little. So you have this information to make certain you have what you need to be successful to get your student where you would like for him to go. Again, this is just some information. We really ask if you really have anything and you can't get with us via email sometimes because the email is backed up, please call 259-INFO, which is our Family Information Center. We work with their department day in and day out. They know all the information. We know they're able to help you, just like myself and Tim are able to help you, and they have access and they are open nonstop. And especially around this time, they dedicate all of their staff time for the most part to making certain they answer families' questions and help families out with the school options and the choice process, because they know families like a lot of support, need a lot of support. And our first goal as MNPS is to be a great customer service organization. So again, more information, www.mnps.org/school options. And now I'm going to turn this off so we can make certain to get to some good questions from you all.
Well, thank you so much, Ashford. That was a lot of information. You probably
Yes.
parade or something like that after all that that information. But thank you. I saw plenty of questions that I have myself. So what we're going to start doing, you'll start seeing questions from parents come across the comments, and see them come front and center. There's a parent that did email me last week. Tim, you may be able to answer this. And what she was asking me about is she had moved, and she moved into a place where she didn't really think that the school was a good fit. I think it within the Hunters Lane cluster, and was having trouble trying to figure out how she could get her child in the school that she wants to go to this late in the game. Here we are, second semester, and I'm sure people can't help if they need to move and all those types of things. So, do you have any recommendations for parents who may move and relocate and maybe want to have another option somewhere else, or maybe even where they previously lived?
So for students that are already enrolled in Metro School at this time of the school year, in order for you to apply to an optional school, even with one with space, that application deadline was back in the end of August. It is not taken into consideration for parents who have moved and perhaps doesn't find that the new school is the right fit for them. What we do offer for parents at this time of the school year is continuity. Parent would be responsible for transportation, but through continuity, parent would be allowed to keep their child at the school that they were attending prior to the move.
Okay.
And I
And
think
so that parent doesn't have any choices, any options as far as the decision because it's so late into the school year. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
That is correct. The application deadline of August, I believe it was 27th or 28th of the month, would apply in this case.
so. Let me elaborate on that a little bit as well. So if the family actually moved, that they probably will have a new zone school, right? So if they moved and the school of zone is different, and they're like, "Hey, I want them to go to this school now," and it is their zone school, or they have a optional zone option school, because of those two choices, they can have access to that school. Now, what makes it difficult is around this time, many of our schools, because of the teacher to student ratio, because of those things, are already full, and some are above their seat availability. So it's kind of
Mhm.
hard to move those students unless it does qualify for an emergency hardship. And I know
Mhm.
many of your parents, I've talked with some, I've talked with Mr. Little about what constitutes an emergency hardship in this time. And that will be something that we work with families on to see what the options are to get them to the school where they feel is best safe for their student or meets their needs, as long as it meets that criteria.
Can you give us an example of an emergency hardship?
So,
Um,
yep. So this is what we, and I say this because Nashville, we are compared to many of our other districts allow many options. So normally what quantifies as an emergency hardship is something that has, just taken place all of a sudden, that it wasn't prepared for. It's just, those things that happen. And unfortunately, oftentimes we're talking about a medical incident, some type of threat or physical harm that has taken place that just came about, things of that nature. What I'm going to share with you also, Ms. Thomas, is as I'm looking at it right now, our policy around everything that is valid. So a valid safety threat, a sudden change of legal custody, or recently relieved valid power of attorney, documented medical or psychological condition affecting the student verified by a physician who is treating the student, things like that. Where we have declined some emergency hardships as those things that were forecasted out and families knew about it and were like, well, I just didn't like a teacher, I needed a change. But circumstances prior or during the optional process, babysitting and childcare, unfortunately, our policy stipulates that we can't take those into consideration for an approval of criteria. Circumstances that involve convenience rather than an actual emergency. And again, I'll share this document so that you can share with the family so everybody can see what that criteria is and what traditionally we have said no to. Now, I will also say we look at every situation, right? So we know a lot of situations come in and every situation isn't cookie cutter. So we also work with the schools to make certain they know that a family is seeking to leave or enter, and we want to get their insight and input about things that are going on. For instance, we've had an uptick in ask around bullying for students, male and female, and we want to understand from our schools what's taking place. Have you worked with the families to put a safety and security plan in place? What is all going on to support this kid so they don't feel like they have to just leave and then we send them to another school and it may be the same situation. So we want to try to work with the families in the school first, but there are options, but we want to be able to let you see them so everybody knows ahead of time.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. I have a recommendation for that whole bullying thing, but that's another
Okay.
conversation. Thomas Driver just said, "How do we get? How do parents get an I-90 number?" And I think you talked about that. If you could recap that, if a parent doesn't have a student ID number, or they call it an I-90 number, but I believe it's that student ID number that you were referencing early
Yeah.
on.
Tim, will you help Mr. Driver?
Certainly. So student ID number can be obtained by any representative at the enrollment center. And we have about 8 different enrollment center that is located near our high school. You can also visit the MNPS.org website, and under the Learn tab, there's a drop down if you want to select enrollment center. There's a lot of information on how you can proceed conveniently with perhaps requesting it online, and it will also give you what documentation would be required to obtain a student ID number.
And it is www.mnps.org/register for school. And it'll
Okay.
show you how to apply for a 190 number.
Okay, we'll pull
MNPS.org.
up for it. Go ahead,
No,
Ashford.
MNPS.org/register for school.
Thank you for sharing that. We'll get that going across the screen for those of you who need that. I have a question. Wait a minute. Let's see. I think Raya Gamley has one. She said, well, maybe it's a comment. This is good info. Thank you. I want to ask, who do I talk to about getting preferential transfer to Hillsborough for my child, like Mr. Little has preferential treatment to still be on the school board since he and his family lives in District 1 and not in District 4? All right, Miss Raya, I like how you come with smoke. Let me answer that one for you. So first of all, we are nonpartisan. We don't get into the politics of things, but I'm sure that Mr. Little would be glad to answer any questions that you have about where he lives and about him sitting on the school board. But to answer your question about her child going to Hillsborough, can you recap that, Ashford, about the transfer to Hillsborough if she wants to get a transfer?
Yeah, if she wants to get a transfer, we have right now, they'll have to apply for an optional school process for 2022-23. If she wants to go there this semester, she can apply for an emergency hardship, but it will have to meet those emergency hardship numbers. Now, depending on where her son or child goes to school, if they go to JT Moore and she's zoned to JT Moore, she has a direct pathway to Hillsborough. If she's attending JT Moore West End Middle, but she's out of zone, she's going to have to apply for it. So I'm not sure where the young lady lives, but it seems like she's going to have to apply through the optional process to be able to get into Hillsborough.
Just like people have to apply to run for the school board. Now, I have a question about 5th grade. Do the students, so you were talking about the parents won't have to do anything to as far as the 5th grade enrollment in the school as the school slowly transform it into the 5th. What y'all, you know what? When I was little, I went to Brick Church Middle School, Ashford and Tim, and at that school, we had 5th and 6th grade at that school. So that was a long time ago, y'all. And then we had 7th and 8th grade at Ewan Park. So it sounds like for those of y'all who are 70s babies, we're going back to that model. And so what I heard you say, Ashford, is as people transition, they won't have to do anything on their part as far as re-enrolling or anything like that. But my question is, what if they want to possibly go to another school who has fifth grade? What would be the process for that?
So then, and I'm gonna date myself too. So I'm from Knoxville. When I grew up, it was K through 5. So
Oh,
I had K through 5, and middle school was 6, 7, and 8. So I
mhm.
didn't have 5th, 6, 7, and 8. So I was like, oh, we do that. But yes. So if the school does not have currently, if they're not in one of the clusters that has 5th grade, they will need to apply. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get all 5th grade in at one time because of space and cost. But if they're in a cluster and they want to attend a school that has 4th but not 5th, they will need to apply, unfortunately, for that 5th grade school. So it may end up where they have to apply more than once. So we do say that, and I would like to come back on at a different point in time, and we can, with the Reimagine team, talk with Prepare parents about what that looks like and how to prepare them for the total infusion of that.
So, do you, off the top of your head, know the few schools that'll be transitioning soon and when? I mean, just in case we can't get you on before that starts, if you can get that information. If you don't have it right now, that's
Okay.
fine. Just email me and I can
Okay.
bring it up. But that would be good information for people to know.
Okay.
Just in case. Let's see. Let's take.
Someone did ask a question, Ms. Thomas. How much does it cost to get their kid to go to? And there's no outside extra cost. Like, that is your option. That is your choice as a resident of Nashville. You don't have to pay anything extra to go to any school within MNPS. So
But
it's
there
just
are
filling out
some
the
with
form.
interviews, right? There are some that have interviews and have auditions, and you want to name those?
Yeah, the ones the schools that have interviews or auditions are Nashville School of the Arts, Big Picture High School, and as of right now, Tim, did IT Crestwell take themselves off? They no longer want to do the interview process. Am I saying it accurately?
So Crestwell is a audition-based school,
Okay.
but because space isn't a constraint at this time, we're going to go ahead and lotterize and take all applications into consideration, provide a student a seat at the school, and then they will audition at a later time before school begins to know which conservatories will be part of their schedule.
Mhm.
And that's IT Crestwell.
That's
The
IT
other 4
Crestwell.
schools that you have to have academic qualifiers are Meigs Middle School, Hume Fogg High School, MLK Magnet High School, and I'm missing one.
Early college.
Early College, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, that is great. Let's see, Miss Henry, she had a question. It says, "What are the hardship requirements?" She may have missed that. If you don't mind, just kind of going over there again.
Yep. So this is what we have. To be considered for approval, a request to transfer schools for emergency hardship must be due to an extraordinary, unforeseen event or situation which occurred after the deadlines for the optional school process. An extraordinary or unforeseen event is defined as an event or situation that is totally unsuspected or sudden and requires a significant change in the daily life of a family. Examples: a valid threat to the safety of the student that requires safety measures be taken, a sudden change of legal custody, or recently received valid power of attorney, documented medical or psychological condition affecting the student verified by a physician who is treating the student. And then there's 2 others, but I'll share this with you. And then there's a list of what we currently don't accept as criteria for an emergency transfer hardship, right? So that's circumstances that were taking place prior to the primary school process. Babysitting, bullying situations, unless it turns violent and there is court orders. We ask for documentation. So if there's a bully incident and it's turned to violent and a family has police records and documents, then we understand for a child to be successful in the education environment, we're going to have to make provisions and work with them to find a school that has available seating. Now, I do want to say this. We recognize the importance of an emergency hardship, but sometimes we work with the parents to say, hey, you may want your child at the you qualify for an emergency hardship, but you're trying to get them into Hillsborough at this grade. Well, Hillsborough, we talk with the principal, we talk with our data and our boundary planning team, and they say Hillsborough is 10 students over seat projection for this school, right? So we try to work with the family to say this school is full. These are your 5 or 6 other choices, to make certain that we don't put strain on that other school as well, but we do provide other options and choices for that family if we can't get them in their first choice.
And it's funny that you should say that. Like, I just think about if people are choosing a particular school at high capacity, like what is the thought process behind like making sure that that's also offered somewhere else, right? That we have that continuity all around the district, so that if there's not enough room in Overton or at Hillsborough or at Hunter's Lane or wherever someone chooses to send their child, like how do we make sure that we take whatever those great things are that people are asking for, that parents are seeking, to make sure that we duplicate those things and have that available to everybody, and everyone has access to that.
Well, you advocate for it all the time. So that's where we as MNPS have to, take that inner look to say, okay, what are we doing well here that we need to duplicate, right? What is it about this school that families may not feel that they're getting at this school in these areas? We have to continue to work to improve, to make certain that families, and make certain that the stigma is not that, oh, we can't go to this school, we only have these schools to go to, but that comes with building trust. That comes with the community being connected with the school. That comes with our educators being connected with the community, with families, with students, to be able to grow not just academically, but socially, to become a fabric. So we know we have work to do in that space as well.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier about tours. Let me see if I got anything else coming across. I don't want to miss anybody's questions, but the tours, I think it's important, like you said, to do tours. I did tours. I called schools. I did all of those things. I remember when my kids were younger and they were going to Amqui, and I wanted my children to be over there with Dr. Steele. I wanted to, because she had a couple of my older children, and I just love the way she led. Those tours are important. So can you talk about the tours for the school, so parents can go look,
Yep.
go walk through those buildings, go ask questions, question everything, question everybody. And there you find the truth. And can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so our tours were supposed to be a part of something that added on to we would normally have a school choice fair that happened in the fall. We would go to the not the farmer's market, the fairgrounds, and have this big room where all the schools got in there and showcased it. COVID has stopped us from doing that, but the tours are set up for families to be able to walk through the school building, to see what's going on, to look in the classrooms, to look at what's on the wall. Is it aesthetically pleasing to say, man, my kid, it's vibrant in here. He sees him or herself on the walls in here. It looks like a great environment to bring my kid to. And it's ask questions, right? To ask teachers questions, to ask the leadership questions, to ask not just the leaders, go in the cafeteria and ask the cafeteria workers, hey, tell me about this school. Ask the people, the janitors, like ask the people, that may be off the beaten path, but are intricate to the workings of the school. Hey, tell me more about this school so you understand everything that's going on. So right now, we ask that you call those schools. You can email the principals once you find that information and ask to set up a tour. Hey, my family is interested in attending this school. We want to come and find out more about you, more about your staff, and more about the school. When can we come and do a tour? And they should jump to make certain that they are willing and working with you to set those tours up. And the only caveat right now, things may be shifting a little bit, but right now they're only taking place after those school hours. So probably after 3:30, 4 o'clock. But hopefully as we get past this Omicron virus, that we can begin to slowly but surely start to have tours in person. But right now, today's February, well, tomorrow is February the 1st. You will really only have like 9 or 10 days to do it, so you can get your information in time.
Yeah. So Karita was just asking that, can we participate in tours during the pandemic? Can we tour the school so yes, to answer your question, Karita, yes, you can do those tours. Those tours are preferably after school to make sure that you and your family are in a safe environment, making sure we're keeping everybody in the building safe. But those tours are available. I know that Purpose Prep is doing virtual tours. And so check out their website. We have Miss Lagra Newman on our Access Denied on this past Wednesday. And shout out to Purpose Prep. They'll have fifth grade this coming year. So shout out to them. I do have a question about pre-K. I was talking to Representative Love today. We were talking about pre-K and how some people like actually said like we don't believe in that pre-K works. I believe pre-K works, and I'm sure that a lot of parents are excited about pre-K for their children. So I heard you say that those applications will open up March 1st through the 31st.
Yep.
And Tim or Ashford, are there any particular schools that have the pre-K so that families know where to go?
Yeah, I will get that list to you. The young lady on our team, that's the specialist, Alex Hayes. She couldn't be with us today, but all of our schools, all of our elementary schools do not have pre-K because of space and because of funding. But we have added pre-K to more of our schools this year than were last year because, to your point, families, the research recognize pre-K is vital. It is vital, and many of our families are asking for it. They want pre-K. But because of teachers, the space that we have, and the cost for pre-K, we can't have it. We don't have it right now in all of our elementary schools. But I think from mayors past, and I know Dr. Battle strongly is for everybody having pre-K, is making sure we get it right, and the cost is there, and we have the teachers there to be able to teach it. But I will share that information which schools do have it. Now, we do have a preference. Many families try to get their 3-year-old, 3.5-year-old in. We do have a preference for 4-year-olds because of the limited space that we have. So if your pre-K student is 3 and not 4 yet, he can still apply, but he or she will be on a wait list until all those 4-year-olds are placed within a school before he. So that's kind of the caveat with that right there. But I'll make
really
sure
you do like the pre-K 4 is what probably needs to say pre-K 4. Like a lot of parents are familiar with that. That's interesting. I mean, I would be glad when we come to a space where we can have pre-K 3. Can you imagine a world where we do have 3-year-olds in classrooms learning? My children were reading and writing in cursive at 4 years old, my 2 oldest children. So imagine if all of Nashville's children had access to doing that, because we can do it. Like, it's not hard. We don't have children who are hard to educate. We just need to make sure that they have access and they have, the education that they need, the equity they need. So I'll be glad when we have a world where we're putting 3-year-olds in that program.
Trust me, my wife is hoping my 3-year-old could be in somebody's school right now. Trust me.
It's the most critical age, right? You want to catch them at 3 years old. They're exploring things. They're starting to form their verbal communication. And so if we can get that right in the beginning, I think that we will see education go a long way. We really will have a world-class education system. Well, y'all, any last words before we leave and wrap it up?
I know we were just talking about preschool and pre-K, but I want to also reach out to those parents out there that perhaps may have 11th and rising 12th graders that they are going to be applying for. I want to elaborate on our deadline. I know Ashford has mentioned that application deadline is February 11th. That deadline is applicable and applies to grades level kindergarten through 10th. If you are applying for an 11th grader or 12th rising, you actually have until March Friday, March the 11th to submit an application for your 11th and 12th grade. And the reason why we allocated a little bit more time for our 11th and 12th grade applicants is because each and every single one of those applications goes through a transcript review process by the principal of the school that they are requesting the transfer to. So that I just wanted to clarify that the deadline of February 11th applies for kindergarten through 10th, and 11th and 12th have until March 11th to apply.
Okay, thank you for that. If we could get that maybe in some bullet points so that we can put that up, because we want to keep this in front of the parents until the deadlines are up. And I think talking about this each week on our our live Facebook shows and putting things up on our Facebook will be very helpful. Anything from you, Ashford? We got one. Let's take one last question. Are the seats first come? Oh, somebody took it away from me. Are the seats first come, first serve? And if so, what is the process to default? Is there a process to default to the second choice? So if they don't get the first choice, do they get the second choice?
Tim, you want to elaborate on that?
So applications are seat placement are definitely not first come, first serve. I can assure you that any application that we receive between the go live date of January 24th and received by deadline of February 11th, 11:59 online, all go into a randomized process. Gotcha. So, it's a 50-50 chance. What you want to make sure is to just make sure that you get your application in no later than the deadline. So that way it goes through the randomized process.
Tim, y'all don't have no paper bag back there, do you? With those numbers shaking up or a Tupperware bowl. Like we do. I hope y'all don't have.
You know what? Before I joined the district, I heard that was how actually the lottery was drawn. You actually literally drew balls out of so we've come a long way, Sonia.
Thank God for growth. All right, Ashford, any last words before we go? We appreciate you guys being here, but I want to give you a chance to say some last words.
Man, we want to, again, myself and Tim, on behalf of our office in the district, thank you for having us. My email address, if you have any issues and you can't get across, is Ashford, ASHFORD, Hughes, HUGHES, at MNPS.org. We will work with you. We want to make certain that you recognize that we value you, we value your student, and we want to make certain that you understand and recognize your option. As a father, new to the district, before I started working here, me and my wife had no idea how to choose a school, but we knew that my nephews had gone to a Montessori school in Knoxville and loved it. So we wanted to end up going to a public Montessori school. I grew up in public school and said my kids are going to go through public school so they can get a full range of education and experiences. We are here to try to work with you. And if we don't always get it right, tell us about it. Work with us and let's work together, because I always am a believer in fixing injustice, not fixing kids. And that's the mantra that we live by. We don't make decisions based off of who has power, who doesn't have power. We make decisions off of what's best for the kids and how we can work with families. So we want to work with you. We want to build trust with you. And we want to make sure that your kids know and your families know you have options. And if you don't understand what your options always are, reach out to us and we'll come to you when need be and let you know what those options are.
Right. Thank you, Ash. I got to mess with you because when you was spelling your name, I'm an old baby. You know how Fred Sample used to spell his name. Yeah. I was thinking that in my head. Tim and Ashford, thank you guys for being here tonight. This is I'm gonna tell you, for most parents, and I can relate. Sometimes when we make decisions about what school our children go to, it almost feels like a life and death or life changing decision that we have to make. I know when the school season started for me, I literally sat in the dark, depressed about what to do with my son, because not all children fit in a box. They just don't. And I know that many parents, like myself, want to make sure that we put our children in school that's a best fit for them. And sometimes that school is not in the neighborhood. Sometimes that school is across town. And then sometimes we just don't have access to the school that we might want to send our child to. So I think it's important that we have these conversations. I think it's important that we discuss like what's the real vision, or what we want schools to look like for our children, and making sure that we're sharing that with the district. I think it's important that, like you said, when we have issues, that we can bring those issues to the district as a whole, and fight, on behalf of other parents. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So thank you guys for being here tonight. It's a wonderful conversation. We'll make sure that if we get any more questions from parents, that we will, send them your way, Ashford and Tim, so that you guys can help them during this application process. Wait a minute, Shamika said this needs to be an ongoing discussion if they really want to help. And I think that we can work on having an ongoing conversation about this. This is our first year actually making this conversation on our platform for speaker series. So I want to commit to bringing you guys back every year to continue this conversation. So Ms. Hope, when I say I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna do it. Next year, we're gonna ask them to come back. And Tim and Ashford, I hope y'all still with them. I don't know, with turnover, but hopefully you guys are still here, and we can continue this conversation, and maybe we'll discuss it later on in the year as it fits within the process. So thank you guys.
Absolutely.
Thank you, parents, grandparents, community people. Thank you for joining us. Look forward to a great Black History Month. And what do you call it, Ashford?
Blacks in History Month.
And Blacks in History Month. Next month will be our speaker series, and our programming will be around some of the civil rights leaders that are right here in Nashville, Tennessee. I bet you some of y'all didn't even know. You got real civil rights leaders, people that sat at lunch counters and things, people that walked with Dr. King right here in our city. So we'll have some of those people on as our guests. But thank you again, and have a good night.
Thank y'all.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.